Well, I think that when I saw the results, both on particularly Saturdays and Sundays, I was very pleased that I was on international duty, and I hope you enjoyed the experience of chatting to yourself.
Oh, so what you're saying to me here is that you're saying that Nottingham Forest are going to win the league.
But well, I wouldn't discount it.
Hello, I'm Matthew Chris from the panel, and welcome along to another edition of Premier League Predictions. And joining me today, after his short international break last week, is a man who's had his hands on the Premier League title on 4 different occasions. It's Brian McClair. Now, Brian, we got Mark Lawrenson, to come off the bench for you last week, and he saved himself somewhat with a prediction for Monday night's game, where he called it 2-1 Fulham, which it was just in injury time. So I'd say you haven't got to look over your shoulder too much going into this week's predictions, but we'll try our best to beat Laura, shall we?
Well, I think that when I saw the results, both on particularly Saturdays and Sundays, I was very pleased that I was on international duty, and I'm glad that Mark had. I think that Mark was a very good substitute for me, because he's more of an experienced broadcaster than I am, and I hope you enjoyed the experience of chatting to yourself.
Well, of course, we did enjoy it, and he's warming up on the sidelines always, just in case. So no pressure. But let's start. Let's see how we get on with this week's Premier League predictions. And it's a 3 o'clock game to start us off. It's Brentford versus Bournemouth.
Well, Bournemouth are certainly in form, confident after the recent wins against Arsenal and City, and a very good away draw at Villa Park. Brentford have dropped more points from winning positions than any other Premier League team this season. 14, would you believe? I think they dropped 30 last year in total, and they've had no clean sheets in the last 12 games. Brentford won, Bournemouth 2.
Okay, yeah. Bournemouth to follow up what was a stunning victory last week against Man City. We'll come on to them shortly. Next up, guess what? It's a London derby. It's Crystal Palace versus Fulham at Selhurst Park.
Well, in the last game on Monday night, Fulham had a very interesting quantity of shots, and they had 26, but they took 2 late goals in injury time to not only save the game for them, but give them a win and I believe that they deserved at least a draw at the game, and they're undefeated in the last 6 London derbies. Palace, of course, drew 2 each last week also, but they missed an awful lot of chances, and I'm sure that they would be ruining those missed chances. They had to rely on 2 defenders to score 2 goals for them, but they did gain a valuable point that just keeps them out of that bottom 3. I think the game will be I'm going to go for a draw. Crystal Palace 1, Fulham 1.
Okay, 1-1. Next up, it's your old favourites, Everton, who, since you're away, have lost to the bottom club, Southampton, but they're away to West Ham on Saturday afternoon.
Well, Sean Dyche felt that Everton did enough in the game last week against Southampton to get at least a draw, but that wasn't the case, losing 1-0. In the whole history, Everton have won more games versus the Hammers than any other team, including a 1-0 win in London last season. I'm going to go for another draw. West Ham 1, Everton 1.
Another draw. What you make it a bit of pressure on the West Ham manager at the minute. Not really going for them after they were planning big after Moyes left. Do you think there's anything?
There's been lots of comments made, lots of situations probably around both managers in this game. But you wouldn't have expected the team to be it's a couple of points above Everton. Their manager might have been under a bit more pressure. However, they don't seem to have got things going as perhaps was expected. I saw some comments from David Moyes suggesting that West Ham should remain steadfast and patient with the present manager. We'll have to wait and see, because they've not been particularly noted for their patience in recent seasons.
Okay, well, we mentioned Southampton just a minute ago, who got off the mark with that win against Everton last week. This time they travel to Molineux and they've got Wolves away.
Well, Southampton earned the first win last weekend, as you said, and leapfrogged their opponents this weekend. And in their last away match, where they narrowly lost at City, they earned an awful lot of praise from the City players and City coach Guardiola. Will sit at the bottom of the table without a win, conceding 27 goals and losing 4 of their 5 home games this season. But I think that run will change, or the fortune will change at the weekend. I'm going to go for Wolves 2, Southampton 1.
Okay, so you think the Southampton victory was a little bit of a flash in the pan, not going to go on a record-breaking run and storm up the table just yet?
I think that because it's been the joint worst, I think it's the joint worst start to a Premier League season that Wolves have had. I've just got a little feeling that that'll change on this weekend. They couldn't manage to hold on against Crystal Palace. I think they may have enough this weekend to beat Southampton.
Okay, right, let's move on to the tea time game, Saturday 5:30, and it's Brighton hosting Manchester City, a Manchester City side which I think since we last spoke have lost 3 consecutive games, one in the League Cup, one in the Premier League, and then in Europe this week. What on earth's going on at Manchester City?
Well, it would appear that Guardiola had already preempted performances with regards to the injury situation that they find themselves in. But that's why you have big squads and competitive and talented squads, of which City have probably got the best one. But if you look at the situation with regards to the game, you wouldn't believe that in a game, any game, that City would wait or only complete a shot or a strike on target in the 80th minute, which I thought was quite remarkable. I think that De Bruyne must play this weekend after being sitting on the bench in the last couple of games. It's highly unlikely that City would lose 4 in a row, but I believe that's the first time that Guardiola has lost 3 in a row, although it's been different competitions as City manager. Brighton are wondering how they managed to lose at Anfield after an excellent performance last week, particularly in the first half. But I'm going to go for an away win. Brighton 1, City 3.
Okay, City to get back on track. Do you think everyone's had their piece to say about City this week? Do you think it's panic stations, or I mean, everyone says what strength and depth City have got, but they really seem to be struggling for the first time in years, really, that we're hearing these comments saying they're down to the bare bones and they're struggling with injuries. I don't remember City ever using that excuse, so maybe the games are catching up with them.
Well, I think that the injuries have been in positions that are particularly important to them, the spine of the team, and also you've got whether that's part of it or not. You've got their talismanic striker not scoring as many goals as he did early on in the season. So if you don't defend well, you lose goals. You're not scoring goals. It's going to be difficult, and indeed missing penalties also. But I'm sure it's very encouraging for anybody who's going to be playing against City in the next couple of weeks. But also it's great news for the teams who have aspirations for winning the Premier League, for instance.
Well, talking of which, Saturday 8 o'clock is one of those teams. Liverpool host Aston Villa. Liverpool flying high in Europe, flying high in the Premier League. I was going to say, can anybody stop this Liverpool team? And knowing you'll probably say yes, Nottingham Forest. But as of now, can you see anybody stopping this Liverpool team? Well, I mean,
with regards to Villa, they had a good start in a decent first half last week at Tottenham, but they were completely blown away by an explosive second half performance by Spurs, and losing quite heavily. Liverpool keep winning, as I mentioned. With regards to Brighton, they probably didn't play at their best in that particular game, but they're finding a way to win, which is very much championship type form, to win games when you're not in top form. And it doesn't, the contract situation doesn't seem to be affecting Mohamed Salah at all, with 7 goals and 5 assists in those 10 league games so far. And I expect Liverpool to win the game. Liverpool 3, Villa 0.
Okay, and I spoke to Lauro last week while you were away, and we were talking about this transition that Slopp's come in, and he hasn't really done anything particularly dramatic. He hasn't tinkered too much. He's just taken what he had and kept it going. Is that something that's a rarity, really, isn't it, with a manager? Usually when a manager comes in, they're walking into an unstable club. They need to steady the ship, but it seems to me that he's got all the pieces there just to keep this ticking along.
Well, I mean, there wasn't very much broken up with Jurgen Klopp when they left them. They're a very good group of players. They added to that, and the players that he has had or has got under it to be utilised are performing ever so well. I suppose the situation, if you want to compare to which were reckoned to be the nearest title contenders in City and Arsenal, they've managed to keep quite a consistent team. All down to fewer injuries and also better discipline.
Okay, well, we got that in just before the half-time whistle, which is now blown. Myself and Brian are going to sip on a half-time cup of tea, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes. Hello and welcome back to the panel for our Premier League prediction show. Myself, Matthew Chris, joined by Brian McClair, and we've reached the Sunday games this weekend, and there's a whole host of them and some great games there are too. Let's start with the batch of 2 o'clock games, and it's your old club, one of them, Brian, Manchester United at home to Leicester under a new manager now. Again, since we spoke last, things have all changed at Old Trafford. Tell us what you think.
Well, it's not surprising, I suppose, after the run of results that United have had, that they decided that it was time for a change. I'm not sure if what particular. Well, it's down to results, isn't it? That's the main thing. But maybe part of the way that United have been performing or not performing. A lot of chat around the players. Were they given the manager everything? Do they understand what his instructions? I suppose there's questions still to be asked about the little group of people who are responsible now for running the football club for Jim Ratcliffe, and have they made the right decision with regards to the new coach coming in? And once again, it's as it has been for a number of years with Manchester United. There's an awful lot of compensation to be paid to the staff that have left, along with Ten Hag. I suppose it would be some kind of things that would encourage the people who have been saying from the beginning that he didn't deserve to have a contract extension despite winning the FA Cup. What you got to remember is that, I've said things before, that bad teams can win the FA Cup. They've decided to go with a young manager who's had great success at Sporting, but for me, he's leaving a better team than the one he's going to be going to after the weekend's matches. So, and it's the coach can make a difference, but if other teams have better players than you, it's in the long term, you're not going to be as successful as them. And they got the bounce that they were looking for with the League Cup game against Leicester, winning by 5 games to 2. But you have to kind of counter that with that Leicester had very much changed their team. United only changed one, I think, or maybe 2 players that have been regulars in the first 11. I can't see it being a 7-goal thriller on Sunday, but I fully expect it in Ruud van Nistelrooy's last game as the head coach that they will win, and I'm saying I'm going to go for United 3, Leicester 1.
Okay, we'll come on to their new manager in the coming weeks. He obviously doesn't take charge just yet, but I just wanted to touch on the situation with Ten Hag. A lot of people saying that the United players didn't put a shift in for him. They kind of threw him under the bus, and we've heard this a lot when United managers are left. How true is that? Do you find? Maybe I'm not saying that you did this, but do you find?
Yeah, well, I think you can only make a judgment on what you see. That's the only thing that you're in control of is effort. you can still play poorly or have a mediocre game and also play well. But with the number of substitutes you've got now, there is no excuse for not giving 100% in every game. And if you can't complete the game because you're exhausted your energy, but I think that's the comment that's made to me when I'm watching the games, is that the supporters feels that a lot of the players haven't been giving their utmost in the games, but I don't think that's just necessarily this season. I think you could apply that, or certainly point the finger at certain players and suggest that may be the case for a few seasons perhaps. And it is very disappointing that anyone should be suggesting that, but clearly that's what people can see.
Yeah, well, we could go on all day about the comings and goings of Old Trafford, but we won't. We'll spare you that. We'll move on to another 2 o'clock Sunday game. It's high-flying third-place Nottingham Forest up against Newcastle at the City Ground.
Well, I mean, Newcastle had a very good result at home last week, 1-0 win against Aston, which was their first win in 6, and despite only having 36% of possession. In this calendar year, only 2 players have scored more Premier League goals than Alexander Isak, who got the winner last week. Nottingham Forest, who are third, would you believe, have the same record after 10 games as Leicester when they won the Premier League in 2016, winning 5, drawing 4, losing 1. But they've scored more goals and they've got more clean sheets. Could there be another upset with regards to the Premier League? Who knows? Chris Woods, the New Zealander, has scored 23 Premier League goals for Forest, which is now 1 more than Stan Collymore and 1 less than the long-standing record held by Brian Roy. Can he get a goal at the weekend? Forest 1, Newcastle 1.
Okay, I can't let you off there. So you've basically just said that Forest have got the same amount of points as Leicester when they won the league. They've conceded
after 10 games.
After 10 games, conceded less goals. So what you're saying here is that
more goals and they've had more clean sheets.
Well, so what you're saying to me here is that you're saying that Nottingham Forest are going to win the league.
But I wouldn't discount it.
Okay, well, we shall see. As I always say, we shall see. There's us going on about City and Liverpool, but no, you're tipping. You're tipping Forest for the league side. I mean, it is great to see teams come. I know they came up a couple of years ago, but there's always this assumption that teams get promoted and come up, and the best thing they can do is survive. But it's quite refreshing to see a team actually up in the top echelons of the Premier League.
Yeah, I think it's the highest they've been in the Premier League since the late 90s. I think. I think Forest's aim this season was to have a kind of mid-table, mediocre campaign. But I think now that they're in the situation, although they've probably got more difficult games coming up than the ones they've already played. But why shouldn't the Forest fans be dreaming of getting into Europe once again?
Okay, now you've tipped them to win the league, you can watch them drop off a cliff. Final 2 o'clock game is Tottenham versus Ipswich. Well,
Ipswich clearly frustrated by a late goal and a penalty appeal which was turned down after a VAR review, and similar but not quite as drastic as Brentford. They've now been in a situation where they could have 12 points more than they already have, which would make a big difference to the league position they're in. But they are in the bottom 3 without a win. Spurs, on the other hand, scored 4 times from 6 attempts against Villa last week. And with the form that Solanke and Son and Johnson, I think it'll be a big problem for the Ipswich defence, although they have been more of efficient recently. Spurs to win the game 3-1.
Okay, and that brings us on to the final game on Sunday, and the final game of the weekend. It is the 4:30 game at Stamford Bridge. It's Chelsea versus Arsenal. Another team, Arsenal, that since we spoke have hit the buffer somewhat. And well, I mean, are you writing off their title challenge just yet?
No, I don't. I think they're still very much in the title challenge, but then they need to win games. And this game, the weekend, could be a problematic one for them, particularly as it's away from home. Their captain, Odegaard, is training now. Maybe he will feature or start the game, and he's hugely influential in this Arsenal team, which can be, I think, is reflected in the statistics from last week's game at St James's Park, where they had one shot on target, and they've now gone 3 games without a win. And Chelsea's continual improvement under Maresca, seen them move above Arsenal into 4th. Cole Palmer was once again man of the match at Old Trafford last week. I think it's going to be a tight game, as it's normal in the London derby between these sides. Chelsea 2, Arsenal 2.
You can't beat a 2-2 for a Sunday afternoon game, can you? It's an international break after these fixtures. I'm going to put you on the spot slightly. Do you, international breaks often bring about changes in managers? Do you think there's anybody that needs to be looking over their shoulder?
I don't particularly see anybody in the Premier League. I think the one that everybody would have said has already been changed now, and that's Eric Ten Hag. All the rest of them, I don't actually see any particular situation where that may be the case. However, it's already been declared, I think, that Ipswich have got a long-term plan, so I don't think there's any real pressure on Kieran McKenna. There may be a different view with regards to the positions with the two teams of the 2 Ws, West Ham and Wolverhampton. That may be one to have a look out for. But if they both get good results at the weekend, then that should alleviate any kind of pressure for a further period of time.
Okay, Brian says, as you were, and I believe him. So that brings us to the end of this week's Premier League predictions from the panel. Thanks to Brian for joining us after his short break away. We'll see how he gets on. Don't forget, you can add your comments and your predictions at the bottom of this video, and let us know what you think is going to happen. We'll see how Brian's predictions go, and we'll see you again next time. Until then, goodbye.